You think hillbilly families in the 1960s only served boiled vegetables and plain cornbread? Think again. These mountain communities created side dishes that turned humble gardens into feasts. Here are 30 forgotten hillbilly side dishes no one makes anymore. Wilted lettuce salad transformed fresh garden greens into something warm and tangy during spring months across Appalachia. Mountain families gathered tender leaf lettuce from backyard gardens in cool morning hours before the sun wilted the delicate leaves naturally. The magic happened in a cast iron skillet where thick sliced bacon was fried until crispy, then removed while the hot drippings remained sizzling. Vinegar, sugar, and water were added to the bubbling fat, creating a dressing that hissed and steamed. This hot mixture was poured immediately over fresh lettuce, causing leaves to soften and glisten while absorbing smoky, tangy flavors. Bacon crumbles were scattered on top along with sliced green onions and sometimes a chopped, hard-boiled egg. The dish had to be eaten immediately while still warm, making it a communal experience where families gathered quickly around the table. This was spring captured in a bowl, proof that mountain gardens provided luxury when treated with skill. Fried apples served as a sweet and savory side dish that graced hillbilly tables from breakfast through supper during apple harvest season. Families with orchards or access to wild apple trees gathered firm, tart varieties that held their shape when cooked rather than dissolving into mush. The apples were cored and sliced thick, leaving peels on for color and texture, then dropped into a cast iron skillet where bacon grease or butter was already melting. Brown sugar was sprinkled over the slices along with cinnamon and sometimes nutmeg. The apples cooked slowly, turning golden and caramelized while releasing juices into a sweet syrup that coated each slice. Mothers served fried apples alongside pork chops, country ham, or breakfast sausage where the sweetness cut through the richness of the meat. Children loved them because they tasted almost like dessert but appeared at regular meals. This dish stretched the harvest into countless suppers. Poke salad represented both the danger and reward of foraging in Appalachian communities where knowing which plants could feed you and which could kill you was essential survival knowledge. This wild green emerged each spring along fence rows, creek banks, and forest edges, tempting hungry families after long winters of preserved foods. The preparation was critical because raw pokeweed contained toxins that could cause serious illness. So mountain women boiled young leaves multiple times, discarding water between each boiling until bitterness and danger were removed. The thoroughly cooked greens were fried in bacon grease with onions, seasoned with salt and pepper, and sometimes scrambled with eggs. The flavor was earthy, slightly bitter, and deeply satisfying to those who craved fresh vegetables after months of dried beans. Children learned identification and preparation methods by watching their mothers and grandmothers. Understanding this knowledge was survival itself. Cracklin bread elevated ordinary cornbread into something rich and unforgettable by adding pork cracklings left over from rendering lard during hog killing season. When families butchered their yearly hog, fat was slowly rendered in massive iron kettles, leaving behind crispy bits of skin and meat that were golden, crunchy, and intensely flavored with concentrated pork essence. These cracklings were mixed directly into cornbread batter, distributing tiny pockets of crunch and richness throughout the bread. The batter was poured into a preheated cast iron skillet, greased with more lard, creating a crusty bottom that shattered when you bit into it. Each slice contained surprises where cracklings had melted slightly during baking, leaving savory, crispy nuggets that made ordinary cornbread taste like celebration. Mountain families served cracklin bread alongside beans, greens, and soups, where it soaked up pot liquor while adding its own flavor dimension. This bread proved that nothing from the hog went to waste. Pickled beets appeared on hillbilly tables throughout the year, their deep purple color staining plates and fingers while delivering sweet and tangy flavor that cut through heavy winter meals. Summer gardens produced abundant beet harvests that families preserved in glass jars filled with vinegar brine sweetened with sugar and spiced with cloves. The beets were boiled until tender, slipped from their skins while warm, then packed into sterilized jars where hot pickling liquid covered them completely. These jars lined cellar shelves like jewels, their dark contents promising brightness during gray winter months when fresh vegetables were memories. Served cold straight from the jar, pickled beets accompanied pinto beans, cornbread, and fatback as a refreshing contrast to rich, heavy foods. Some families sliced their pickled beets thin while others left them whole, the style often identifying which holler had preserved them. This dish represented summer's abundance preserved for winter's need. Chow was the relish that appeared at nearly every hillbilly meal, a tangy, colorful condiment made from whatever the garden produced in excess before frost arrived. The recipe varied by family, but most versions combined green tomatoes, cabbage, onions, and peppers chopped fine and preserved in a sweet and sour vinegar brine, seasoned with mustard seed, celery seed, and turmeric. Making chow was an end-of-summer ritual where women gathered to chop vegetables, fill massive kettles with the mixture, and process jar after jar of golden relish. The preparation took entire days, filling kitchens with the sharp smell of vinegar and the sound of chopping knives against wooden boards. This relish sat beside plates of pinto beans, transforming each bite with brightness and crunch that plain beans couldn't provide alone. Families judged each other's recipes, comparing sweetness levels and heat from peppers. A jar of good chow was a gift worth giving, representing investment of time and garden harvest. Shucky beans carried the taste of summer into winter months through a preservation method requiring no canning equipment, no salt, and no refrigeration beyond a dry place to hang them. Mountain families harvested mature green beans, strung them on heavy thread using large needles, and hung these bean garlands from porch rafters or kitchen ceilings where circulating air dried them slowly over weeks. The dried beans turned brown and rattled like leather when shaken, storing indefinitely until needed. Rehydrating shucky beans required overnight soaking, followed by hours of slow simmering with a ham hock or fatback until the beans became tender and absorbed smoky meat flavors. The resulting dish had a concentrated, almost meaty flavor that fresh green beans could never achieve, with a texture that was hearty rather than crisp. This preservation technique required no purchased supplies beyond thread, making it accessible to even the poorest families who could grow beans but couldn't afford canning jars. Killed lettuce earned its dramatic name from the hot dressing that transformed raw greens into a wilted, intensely flavored side dish, distinct from its cousin, wilted lettuce salad. The difference was subtle but important to mountain cooks who took pride in regional variations and family recipes. Killed lettuce used a dressing heavy on vinegar with less bacon fat, creating a sharper, more acidic result that truly killed the crispness of fresh leaves. Garden lettuce was torn into a large bowl, while bacon was fried in a cast-iron skillet. Then vinegar, water, sugar, and salt were added to drippings and brought to a rolling boil. This scalding liquid was poured directly over lettuce while stirring rapidly, ensuring every leaf was coated and softened. Green onions and crumbled bacon were added along with sliced, hard-boiled eggs in some households. The dish was served immediately, steam still rising. This was spring tonic food, believed to cleanse the blood after winter. Corn relish captured the sweet essence of summer corn in jars that could be opened months later to brighten winter meals with memories of warm August days. The preparation began with fresh sweet corn cut from the cob, kernels mixed with diced peppers, onions, and celery, in proportions that varied by family tradition. This vegetable mixture was combined with vinegar, sugar, mustard seed, and turmeric, then simmered until flavors melded before being ladled into sterilized jars and processed in boiling water baths. The finished relish was golden yellow with flecks of red and green from peppers, beautiful enough to display on pantry shelves. Corn relish appeared at holiday meals, Sunday dinners, and any occasion calling for something special beyond everyday fare. It was spooned over pinto beans, served alongside ham and biscuits, or eaten straight from the jar as a sweet and tangy snack. Mountain families traded jars of corn relish as currency of friendship and goodwill, each jar representing genuine effort and care. Creamed corn made from scratch bore no resemblance to the bland, starchy contents of commercial cans that would later replace this labor of love in most kitchens. Mountain cooks started with fresh sweet corn at peak ripeness, cutting kernels from the cob with sharp knives, then scraping cobs with the blades back to extract every drop of milky liquid hiding in the corn. This corn milk was the secret ingredient that commercial versions lacked, providing natural thickening and intense corn flavor without need for flour or cornstarch. The kernels and milk were simmered slowly in butter with salt, pepper, and sometimes a splash of cream until the mixture thickened into a rich, sweet mass that clung to serving spoons. The flavor was pure corn essence, sweet and slightly nutty with the richness of butter mellowing every bite. Children who grew up eating homemade creamed corn found canned versions shocking in their inferiority. This dish required patience and fresh ingredients, virtues mountain kitchens had in abundance. Soup beans simmered on wood stoves across Appalachia as the foundation of countless suppers, providing protein and satisfaction when meat was scarce or money was tight. Dried pinto beans were sorted carefully to remove stones and bad beans, then soaked overnight in cold water before being drained and covered with fresh water in heavy iron pots. A ham hock, bacon ends, or chunk of fatback was added for flavor, and the pot was set to simmer for hours until the beans broke down into a creamy mass surrounded by rich, smoky broth called pot liquor. The beans were seasoned simply with salt and pepper, their flavor coming from the slow cooking and the pork fat that melted into every bite. Families ate soup beans several times weekly, spooning them over cornbread and drinking the pot liquor as its own course. Children grew up believing this was the most satisfying food on earth, and many still do. This dish represented security itself, proof that a bag of dried beans could stretch to feed a family for days. Fried okra transformed a vegetable that many outsiders found slimy into crispy, golden nuggets that disappeared from plates before anything else at summer suppers. Fresh okra was sliced into rounds about half an inch thick, then tossed in buttermilk before being dredged in seasoned cornmeal that clung to every surface. The coated pieces were fried in hot lard or bacon grease in cast iron skillets, turned carefully until each piece developed a crunchy golden shell while the inside became tender. The key was high heat and not crowding the pan, lessons passed from mother to daughter across generations. Fried okra appeared at family reunions, church suppers, and everyday meals throughout summer when gardens produced more okra than families could eat fresh. Children who claimed to hate vegetables would devour fried okra without complaint, the cornmeal coating and crispy texture disguising what lay beneath. This dish proved that proper technique could transform any ingredient into something loved. Fried corn captured the peak sweetness of summer in a skillet, concentrating flavors that boiled corn on the cob could never achieve. Fresh sweet corn was cut from the cob with sharp knives, then the cobs were scraped with the blades back to extract every drop of milky liquid. This corn and its milk were added to a cast iron skillet where bacon grease was already shimmering, and the mixture was stirred constantly over medium heat until the sugars began to caramelize and the corn turned golden in spots. Salt, pepper, and sometimes a splash of cream were added near the end, creating a dish that was simultaneously sweet, savory, and slightly crispy where the corn touched the hot iron. Mothers made fried corn when summer gardens produced more than families could eat, and the smell of it cooking drew everyone to the kitchen. This was a dish that had to be eaten immediately, straight from the skillet to the plate, capturing the essence of August in every caramelized bite. Vinegar coleslaw provided cool, tangy relief alongside heavy summer meals without the richness of mayonnaise that could spoil quickly in kitchens without reliable refrigeration. Fresh cabbage was shredded fine using sharp knives or hand-cranked shredders, then tossed with salt and left to wilt slightly, releasing liquid that was squeezed out before dressing. The dressing was simple but precise, combining vinegar with sugar, celery seed, and sometimes a touch of prepared mustard, heated until the sugar dissolved before being poured hot over the cabbage. This quick pickling process softened the cabbage while infusing it with bright, tangy flavor that improved over several hours. Unlike creamy coleslaws that had to be eaten immediately, vinegar slaw lasted for days in the icebox, making it practical for families who cooked large batches. It appeared beside fried chicken, barbecue, and fish fries where its acidity cut through richness. This slaw proved that simple preparations often outlast fancier versions. Cornmeal dumplings floated in pots of soup beans and greens across Appalachia, providing starch and substance that turned side dishes into complete meals. The dumplings were made from cornmeal mixed with just enough flour to hold them together, bound with an egg and enough milk or pot liquor to form a thick batter dropped by spoonfuls into simmering liquid. As they cooked, the dumplings puffed slightly and absorbed the flavors surrounding them, becoming tender and almost creamy inside while maintaining their shape. Unlike fluffy biscuit dumplings, cornmeal versions were denser and more satisfying, with a slightly gritty texture that mountain families preferred. Mothers dropped them into pots of pinto beans during the last 20 minutes of cooking, stretching a pot of beans to feed additional mouths. Children learned to count dumplings and negotiate for extras, understanding even young that these golden spheres were something special. This was poverty cooking elevated to comfort food. Green tomato relish preserved the garden's unripened bounty when early frost threatened or when vines produced more than could possibly ripen before cold weather arrived. Green tomatoes were chopped along with onions, peppers, and cabbage, then salted and left overnight to draw out moisture that would otherwise make the relish watery. The drained vegetables were combined with vinegar, sugar, and spices, including mustard seed and celery seed, then simmered until slightly softened before being packed into sterilized jars. The finished relish was tangy with a pleasant crunch, perfect for spooning over beans, serving alongside meat, or eating straight from the jar when hunger struck between meals. Making green tomato relish was a race against weather, with women watching forecasts and gathering every unripe tomato when frost threatened. Jars of this relish lined pantry shelves like trophies, each one representing vegetables saved from waste. This was mountain thrift at its most practical and delicious. Succotash combined corn and lima beans into a dish that tasted like summer abundance itself, the two vegetables complementing each other in ways that neither could achieve alone. Fresh sweet corn was cut from the cob while lima beans were shelled from their pods, both vegetables coming from the same summer gardens within days of each other. The beans were simmered first since they took longer to cook, then corn was added along with butter, salt, and pepper in the final minutes. Some families added diced tomatoes or bits of bacon, creating variations that identified regional preferences and family traditions. The combination of sweet corn and creamy limas created a dish that was both filling and nutritious, providing protein and starch in one colorful bowl. Succotash appeared at harvest meals and Sunday dinners when gardens overflowed with produce. This dish had Native American roots that predated European settlement, making it one of the oldest American foods still appearing on tables. Squash casserole turned summer's most abundant vegetable into something families actually wanted to eat, disguising yellow squash beneath layers of cheese, crackers, and butter. Gardens produced yellow crookneck squash in overwhelming quantities, vines churning out more than any family could consume before they grew too large and seedy. Sliced squash was boiled until tender, drained well, then mixed with sautéed onions, beaten eggs, and enough cheese to make children forget they were eating vegetables. This mixture was poured into baking dishes, topped with crushed crackers mixed with melted butter, and baked until golden and bubbling. The result was creamy, cheesy, and crispy on top, a dish that disappeared quickly at church suppers and family gatherings. Squash casserole solved the annual problem of what to do with the garden's most prolific producer. Neighbors traded squash back and forth, and this casserole ensured none of it went to waste. Homemade sauerkraut represented the German heritage that wove through Appalachian foodways, preserved cabbage providing tangy brightness during winter months when gardens lay dormant under snow. Making kraut was a fall ritual that followed the cabbage harvest, with women shredding heads of cabbage using wooden kraut cutters that had passed through multiple generations. The shredded cabbage was layered with coarse salt in large crocks, then pounded with wooden stompers until liquid rose to cover the vegetables. Clean cloths and weighted plates kept the cabbage submerged during weeks of fermentation in cool cellars, the brine growing tangy as beneficial bacteria transformed the vegetable. The finished kraut was eaten with pork, served alongside sausages, or cooked with potatoes into dishes that warmed winter tables. families guarded their crocks and recipes, adjusting salt ratios and fermentation times according to preferences passed down for generations. This was living food, transformed by time and tradition. Bread and butter pickles earned their name from the theory that farmers could trade them for bread and butter, though most families made them to enjoy their own summer cucumber harvest year-round. Cucumbers were sliced thin along with onions, salted and left to crisp for several hours, then drained and packed into jars with a sweet and tangy brine of vinegar, sugar, turmeric, and celery seed. The pickles were processed in boiling water baths and stored on cellar shelves where their golden color glowed in lamplight. Unlike dill pickles with their sharp sourness, bread and butter pickles were sweet enough that children ate them as snacks, tangy enough to cut through rich meats, and crunchy enough to satisfy. They appeared at every meal where pickles were appropriate, which in mountain homes meant nearly every meal. Making bread and butter pickles was a summer afternoon project that yielded jars lasting through the following spring. Each jar represented cucumbers transformed into treasure. Ramps and potatoes celebrated spring's most pungent wild harvest, the wild leeks that emerged from forest floors, announcing winter's end with an aroma that could clear a room. Mountain families hiked into shaded hollows where ramps grew in thick patches, digging the slender bulbs with their broad green leaves. The smell was intense, a combination of onion and garlic that clung to breath and clothing for days after eating. Ramps were cleaned and sliced, then fried with cubed potatoes in bacon grease until both vegetables turned golden and soft. The potatoes absorbed the ramp flavor, mellowing its intensity while the ramps provided brightness that plain fried potatoes lacked. This dish appeared at ramp dinners, community celebrations marking spring's arrival with pungent festivities. Schools sometimes excused children the day after ramp dinners because the smell was too powerful for classrooms. Ramps and potatoes proved that mountain people embraced what the forest provided. Stewed tomatoes served hot from the pot or cold from the jar provided tangy brightness that elevated beans, cornbread, and plain rice into complete meals. Summer gardens produced more ripe tomatoes than any family could eat fresh, so women spent August days processing them into jars that lined cellar shelves. The tomatoes were scalded to remove skins, chopped roughly, then simmered with sugar, salt, and sometimes torn bread that thickened the mixture. Some families added onion and celery, while others kept their stewed tomatoes pure, the variations identifying regional traditions. Served warm over rice or cornbread, stewed tomatoes created a simple meal that satisfied without requiring meat or expensive ingredients. Children often loved them despite their vegetable status, the sweetness making them almost dessert-like. Jars of stewed tomatoes represented summer captured and preserved, ready to brighten winter tables when fresh produce was months away. Scalloped potatoes layered thinly sliced spuds with butter and milk into a dish that transformed humble root vegetables into something approaching elegance. The preparation required patience, slicing potatoes uniformly thin so they would cook evenly, then layering them in baking dishes with dots of butter, sprinkles of flour, and enough milk to create sauce as the dish baked. Salt and pepper were added between layers, and some families included sliced onions that softened during the long baking time. The top layer browned and crisped while the potatoes beneath became tender and creamy, swimming in sauce thickened by potato starch. Scalloped potatoes appeared at Sunday dinners, holiday meals, and any occasion calling for something fancier than plain boiled potatoes. Mothers made them in large pans, knowing they would disappear quickly, the combination of crispy top and creamy interior proving irresistible. This dish tasted like celebration. Cooked apples and onions paired two ingredients that seemed unlikely companions until the heat of a cast-iron skillet revealed their natural affinity. Tart apples were sliced thick and cooked alongside onion wedges in bacon drippings, both ingredients softening and caramelizing together until the apples turned golden and the onions became sweet and jammy. A touch of brown sugar enhanced the natural sweetness, while vinegar added brightness that kept the dish from becoming cloying. This combination appeared beside pork chops, roasted chicken, and sausages where sweet and savory flavors complemented rich meats perfectly. The dish represented Appalachian cooking's German influences, similar combinations appearing in Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine and traveling south with immigrants. Families who raised hogs understood that pork and apples belonged together. Adding onions created a more complex side dish that made inexpensive cuts taste better than they deserved. Cucumber salad appeared on summer tables when gardens produced more cucumbers than even the most dedicated pickle makers could process into jars. Fresh cucumbers were sliced thin, salted lightly, and left to release liquid before being dressed with vinegar, sugar, and sometimes sour cream, depending on family tradition. The salad was best served ice cold, the cucumbers crisp and refreshing against heavy summer meals of fried chicken and barbecue. Some families added sliced onions or fresh dill from the herb garden, creating variations that distinguished their version from neighbors. Cucumber salad provided cool relief on hot days when kitchens were sweltering from canning projects. It required no cooking at all, just slicing and mixing, making it practical for the busiest harvest days. Children learned to make this salad young, their knife skills developing through the repetitive slicing the recipe required. This was summer simplicity at its most refreshing. Turnip greens simmered with salt pork provided essential vitamins during winter months when fresh vegetables were scarce and families depended on root cellars. The greens were stripped from stems, washed multiple times to remove grit, then cooked long and slow with a chunk of salt pork or ham hock that flavored the cooking liquid into something worth drinking on its own. Hours of simmering transformed tough leaves into silky greens that melted on the tongue, their slight bitterness balanced by the rich pork flavor that permeated every bite. The pot liquor left behind was considered as valuable as the greens themselves, sopped up with cornbread or sipped straight from cups. Turnip greens appeared weekly on mountain tables from fall through early spring, their iron content keeping families healthy when other fresh foods were unavailable. This dish proved survival food could also be delicious. Potato cakes transformed yesterday's mashed potatoes into crispy patties that graced breakfast and supper tables, proving leftovers could become something worth anticipating. Cold mashed potatoes were mixed with a beaten egg and enough flour to help them hold together, then shaped into thick patties and fried in bacon grease until golden crusts formed on both sides. The exterior shattered satisfyingly while the interior remained creamy, a textural contrast that made these simple cakes addictive. Some families added chopped onion or leftover ham, creating heartier versions that could serve as main dishes. Potato cakes appeared alongside eggs at breakfast, next to pork chops at supper, or eaten alone when hunger struck between meals. Children learned early that mashed potatoes made in quantity meant potato cakes the following day. This dish embodied the mountain philosophy that nothing should be wasted. Baked beans slow-cooked with molasses and salt pork achieved depth of flavor that canned versions could never approach, the long cooking time transforming simple navy beans into something rich and deeply complex. Dried beans were soaked overnight, then combined with molasses, mustard, onion, and a chunk of salt pork in heavy crocks that went into ovens for hours of slow baking. The beans absorbed sweet and savory flavors while the pork rendered its fat throughout the pot, creating a dish simultaneously sweet, salty, and smoky. Families served baked beans at church suppers, community gatherings, and Saturday night dinners before Sunday services. The beans could be made ahead and reheated, improving with time as flavors continued to meld. Children who grew up eating homemade baked beans found canned versions deeply disappointing. This dish required time but rewarded patience. Creasy greens emerged as one of the first wild salads of spring, their peppery leaves providing fresh vitamins after long months of preserved foods and root vegetables. These wild cresses grew along creek banks and in moist meadows, their small leaves easy to gather by the handful once you learn to identify them among other early spring growth. The greens were eaten raw in salads dressed with warm bacon grease and vinegar, or wilted quickly in a hot skillet with fatback until just softened but still bright green. Their flavor was sharp and peppery, similar to watercress but more intense, a taste that announced winter was finally ending. Gathering creasy greens was a family activity, with children learning which plants were safe and which to avoid. This knowledge passed through generations without written instructions, Survival wisdom encoded in shared foraging trips. Fried green beans transformed fresh summer beans into something crispy and addictive, a preparation that made vegetables disappear from plates faster than desserts. Fresh green beans were trimmed and left whole or cut into pieces, then dredged in seasoned flour or cornmeal and fried in hot bacon grease until their coating turned golden and crunchy. The beans inside steamed and softened while the exterior crisped, creating contrast between tender vegetable and shattering crust. Some families dipped beans in buttermilk before dredging, helping the coating adhere during frying. Fried green beans appeared at summer suppers when gardens produced abundantly, their crispy exterior making them popular even with children who rejected plain boiled versions. This preparation worked magic on vegetables that could otherwise seem boring and plain. These beans vanished quickly from serving platters. Turnip soup with cracklins was a cold weather favorite that smelled like home the moment it started cooking. The turnips, peeled and diced, simmered alongside their greens in a pot of salty broth until tender. Then came the cracklins, crispy bits of pork rind saved from rendering lard, added for texture and flavor. The combination of smoky, crunchy pork and soft, peppery vegetables made every spoonful feel like a reward for the day's work. This soup did not pretend to be fancy, but it filled you up and warmed you through. It was the kind of dish that made neighbors linger at the table long after the bowls were empty. For families scraping by, turnip soup was proof that the simplest ingredients could still feel like a feast. The scent of it cooking on the stove told everyone that supper was near, and all was well. It was humble, hearty, and exactly what the hills were made of. Campfire Dutch oven. Peach cobbler turned rugged campsites into places of sweet reward after days of hard labor. Hunters or homesteaders opened precious cans of peaches saved from summer and poured them into a cast-iron pot, topping them with biscuit dough mixed on the spot. The lid was covered with glowing coals, and the cobbler baked slowly as night settled over the mountains. The scent of fruit and butter rose into the cool air, drawing every tired traveler toward the fire. When the lid lifted, golden crust revealed bubbling peach syrup that dripped onto tin plates. This dessert was more than a treat. It was proof that even in the wilds, a taste of comfort and celebration was possible. Children scraped the pot clean while adults savored the rare sweetness, knowing the peaches might be the only fruit for weeks. Modern camping desserts cannot match the simple magic of cobbler baked under stars with nothing but iron, fire, and patience to guide it. Cane syrup pie was a dessert deeply rooted in Southern sugar heritage, reflecting both thrift and sweetness. Made by blending cane syrup with eggs, butter, and a simple crust, it created a pie that was rich yet affordable. For families, it was an accessible treat when refined sugar was too costly or scarce. The deep, molasses-like flavor of cane syrup gave it a distinct taste that stood apart from other pies. Children eagerly anticipated slices at Sunday dinners or holidays, associating it with comfort and celebration. Adults valued it for how it stretched inexpensive pantry staples into something that felt indulgent. Cane syrup pie also carried cultural weight, tying households to the sugarcane fields that defined much of the Southern economy. Today, it is rarely baked, its bold flavor and simplicity overshadowed by modern desserts. Forgotten in most kitchens, it remains a reminder of Southern resilience. Cane syrup pie was more than a sweet ending. It was a testament to resourcefulness. Sheep sorrel spring soup welcomed the first bright greens of the year with a flavor that was tart and refreshing after the heavy meals of winter. Southern grandmothers gathered tender sorrel leaves from meadows and fence lines just as church bells finished ringing on early spring Sundays. The lemony taste of the wild plants needed little more than a simmer in light chicken broth with onions and a splash of fresh cream to create a soup that sparkled with natural freshness. Children often joined in the hunt for the soft green leaves, learning to recognize the arrow-shaped plants among the grasses. The soup's gentle tang awakened palates that had grown accustomed to preserved vegetables and root cellars during cold months. Families savored each spoonful, knowing that the short season would pass quickly and the tender sorrel would soon grow tough under the stronger sun. Sheep sorrel spring soup remains a lively reminder of the importance of foraging knowledge and the simple joy of gathering food directly from the earth at the very start of a southern spring. Molasses taffy pull was Christmas entertainment and dessert combined into one sticky, sweet tradition. Molasses was boiled with sugar until it reached hard ball stage, then poured onto buttered platters to cool slightly. Families gathered with buttered hands, pulling the taffy until it turned from dark brown to golden and became firm. The pulling was a social event, children and adults working together, laughing as the candy stretched and folded. The finished taffy was cut into pieces and wrapped, becoming Christmas treats that lasted through winter. In rural communities, taffy pull meant Christmas fun that cost almost nothing but created memories lasting lifetimes. The candy was chewy and intensely sweet, its molasses flavor marking it as mountain treat. This represented Christmas joy created through community effort, proving best celebrations came from working and laughing together, transforming simple ingredients into sweetness through shared labor and tradition. Chicken and slick dumplings were the mountain way of turning one bird into a feast that fed everyone around the table. A single chicken simmered down into a rich broth that filled the house with the smell of Sunday comfort. Thin dumplings rolled by hand replaced fancy noodles, soaking up every drop of flavor and thickening the stew into a creamy, heartwarming dish. The bits of tender chicken floated among the slick dumplings like treasure pieces in gravy. This was not a meal of plenty, but one of patience, pride, and clever hands. Appalachian cooks knew how to stretch what they had until it felt like abundance. Steam rose from the pot like a promise that no one would go hungry tonight. Every bowl felt earned, heavy, and satisfying in the way only home cooking can be. The leftovers, if any, tasted richer by morning. Chicken and slick dumplings turned scarcity into celebration, hardship into comfort, and hunger into harmony. It was food for body and soul alike. Even today, that first spoonful carries the same truth. It does not take much to make a meal worth remembering when it is made with care and love. Buffalo tongue stew was once considered a delicacy of the plains, offering rich texture and surprising tenderness that rewarded those willing to use every part of the animal. After a successful hunt, hunters cleaned the tongue carefully and simmered it for hours with onions, carrots, and a handful of wild herbs until the meat turned soft and silky. The broth thickened naturally, creating a savory base that clung to chunks of potato or cornbread dunked at the table. Around campfires or in frontier cabins, the stew became both celebration and sustenance, honoring the animal that provided so much. Children listened wide-eyed to stories of the chase while the fragrant steam carried through the crisp night air. This dish reflected a deep respect for nature's gifts and the understanding that waste was not an option. Today, buffalo herds have returned, but few cooks attempt the careful preparation of tongue, leaving this once-cherished meal largely forgotten except in the memories of those who knew its unique richness. Blackberry jam cake was Christmas dessert, carrying summer's wild harvest into winter celebration. This wasn't ordinary cake, but dense creation, darkened with blackberry jam stirred into batter. The jam came from wild berries picked along fence rows in July, cooked with sugar and preserved. Come Christmas, jam transformed into cake moisture and flavor, tart, sweet, purple. The batter was spiced with cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg, creating warmth, complementing berry brightness. Baked in cast iron, the cake emerged dark and fragrant, its crumb tight from jam. Some families added caramel icing, others served plain. In mountain communities, blackberry jam cake represented foresight and connection to land, picking berries in summer for Christmas months away. Children remembered helping pick berries, fingers stained purple, understanding this work would become December dessert. The cake sliced thick, each piece carrying memories of summer foraging. Sorrel drink was a festive tart beverage once served in southern homes, carrying deep Caribbean influence. Made from dried hibiscus flowers steeped with spices, sugar, and citrus, it was a bright red drink with bold flavor. Families often prepared it for holidays or special gatherings where its tangy taste stood out from other sweet beverages. Sorrel was cherished not only for its refreshing qualities, but also for its ties to heritage and celebration. It reflected the blending of Caribbean and Southern traditions, especially within African American communities. Children enjoyed it chilled on hot days, while adults valued its cultural symbolism and unique taste. For many households, sorrel drink marked special occasions with color and joy. Over time, it faded as sodas and commercial juices became common, overshadowing its handmade appeal. Today, it is mostly remembered in cultural festivals or passed down through family recipes. Sorrel drink remains a symbol of identity and resilience, showing how global traditions shaped Southern kitchens. Sourwood honey pone delivered the essence of Appalachian mountain summers in a simple yet unforgettable corn cake. Grandmothers blended fresh ground cornmeal with buttermilk and farm eggs, then stirred in a generous drizzle of rare sourwood honey gathered from high mountain hives. Baked in a cast-iron skillet, the pone emerged with a golden crust and a moist crumb sweetened with the floral, slightly tangy notes of the honey. Families prize this treat because sourwood blooms for only a short season, making the honey a cherished ingredient that neighbors often traded like gold. Served warm with fresh butter, each slice carried the fragrance of mountain flowers and the warmth of hearth and home. Children savored every bite, aware that the next taste might be a year away. Sourwood honey pone remains a beloved memory of the Appalachian Hills, where natural bounty and careful timing combined to create a dish that was as fleeting as it was delicious. Stack cake with dried apple filling was Christmas dessert requiring community cooperation and weeks of preparation. This wasn't ordinary cake, but thin layers stacked with dried apple filling, creating towering centerpiece feeding dozens. Women began drying apples in late summer, slicing thin and laying on screens until leathery. Come Christmas, apples were rehydrated and cooked with molasses and cinnamon until thick. The cake layers were simple: flour, lard, molasses, spices, rolled thin and baked separately. Assembly was ceremony, each layer placed and spread with apple mixture. The cake sat for days, letting flavors meld into something slicing clean and tasting like autumn. In mountain communities, stack cake represented cooperation because neighbors often brought layers to celebrations. The finished cake stood tall, dark layers visible through golden apple filling. This represented mountain Christmas, patient, cooperative, deeply satisfying. Pickled eggs with beets were Christmas appetizers that added color and tang to holiday tables. Hard-boiled eggs were peeled and packed into jars with sliced beets and spiced vinegar, turning deep magenta as they pickled. By Christmas, the eggs had absorbed beet sweetness and vinegar brightness, becoming something far more interesting than plain boiled eggs. Sliced and served cold, they provided protein and visual appeal. In mountain communities, pickled eggs represented preservation skill and resourcefulness, turning abundant summer beets and everyday eggs into Christmas specialty. The eggs were firm and tangy with slight sweetness from beets. Children were fascinated by their color, adults appreciated their complex flavor. This was Christmas food that required planning and patience, proving best celebrations came from work done months earlier, transforming ordinary ingredients into something special through time, vinegar, and knowledge. Rabbit and dumplings was a meal that tasted like effort and reward mixed together, the kind that carried the story of the hunt straight to the supper table. Catching the rabbit was only half the work. The rest was done slow and steady in the kitchen. The meat was browned, simmered in broth until tender, and dropped into bubbling stock where floury dumplings waited to soak up every drop of flavor. Steam fogged the windows while the smell drifted through the house, wrapping around everyone like a promise of comfort. It was gamey, rich, and deeply satisfying, an old-world supper that turned survival into celebration. Every bite reminded folks that food earned by hand carried a different kind of pride. Families would sit quiet except for the clink of spoons and soft hums of contentment. Rabbit and dumplings filled bellies and hearts alike, warming even the coldest nights. It was country comfort at its finest, built from grit, gratitude, and a little wild luck. In mountain homes, it stood as proof that patience and hard work always paid off. The meal may have been humble, but the feeling it brought was priceless: home, warmth, and a kind of joy you could only taste. Forager's mushroom. Ragu transformed a handful of wild mushrooms into a meal that tasted of deep forest soil and clean rain. Hunters gathered chanterelles, morels, or other seasonal finds at first light, brushing off pine needles and slicing them into rustic pieces. In a heavy skillet, they melted bacon fat with garlic and wild onions until the fragrance filled the clearing, then tossed in the mushrooms to sear and release their earthy juices. A splash of spring water or a spoon of cream, if available, created a silky sauce that clung to each tender bite. Served over bread or with a side of roasted roots, the ragu delivered warmth and rich umami to those who spent their days in silence among towering trees. This dish celebrated knowledge of the land, for it required careful identification and respect for nature's offerings. Modern cooks may buy farmed mushrooms year-round, but they cannot capture the sense of discovery and quiet reward that came from gathering a meal straight from the shadowed floor of the wilderness. Rabbit gravy over rice was Christmas dinner that stretched small game into meal feeding many. The rabbits were jointed and browned, then simmered until tender in broth thickened with flour into rich gravy. Served over white rice, this created complete meal that was economical and deeply satisfying. In mountain communities, rabbit gravy represented resourcefulness, turning 2 or 3 small rabbits into dinner for 10 or more people. The gravy was savory and rich, flavored with wild onions and black pepper. Rice stretched the meal further, soaking up every drop of gravy while providing filling carbohydrates. This was Christmas dinner born from necessity but elevated through care and proper technique. The rabbit meat was tender and mild, the gravy thick and comforting. Families gathered around steaming bowls, understanding that celebration came from making the most of what you had, transforming scarcity into sufficiency through skill and tradition passed through generations of mountain cooks. Cornmeal mush with drippings was the ultimate proof that Appalachian cooks could turn yesterday's leftovers into today's comfort. First, you stirred cornmeal into salted water until it thickened into a firm porridge, poured it into pans, and let it cool overnight. The next morning, those firm slabs were sliced and fried in hot bacon grease until the edges crisped brown and the centers stayed creamy and soft. The smell alone was enough to pull folks from their beds, as rich and tempting as any feast. Poured over with white gravy or syrup, it became a breakfast fit for a hard day's work. Families who had little knew how to stretch every grain, every drop of grease, and every bit of effort. The crackle from the skillet told them they had done it right. Cornmeal mush with drippings was more than a meal. It was a quiet triumph. It fed the body and reminded the heart that nothing had gone to waste. Each bite tasted like patience, creativity, and pride, the kind only born from making do. What began as simple porridge became a golden slice of home that fed generations through thick and thin. Smoked venison. Jerky ensured that nothing from a successful hunt went to waste and that meat would last through the long frozen months. Lean deer strips were salted generously and hung above a low smoldering fire for hours, sometimes days, until the smoke kissed every fiber and the moisture vanished. The process demanded patience and constant tending to keep the temperature steady without open flames. The result was a dark, chewy strip packed with protein and smoky depth that could be eaten on the trail without any preparation. Hunters and trappers stored the jerky in cloth bags or metal tins, confident it would keep through weeks of travel. Children gnawed on pieces like candy, and adults often crumbled bits into stews for an extra layer of flavor. Even today, jerky remains popular, but few modern versions capture the true wilderness taste of venison, slowly dried over real wood smoke while wind rustled through the trees and snow crept along the ground outside the camp. Batter-fried eggplant rounds were a Depression-era side dish that turned vegetables into something hearty and satisfying. Sliced eggplant was dipped in batter or cornmeal and fried until crisp, creating a dish that could stand in for meat when money was scarce. Families loved its rich texture and flavor, which made simple suppers feel fuller. It became a thrifty way to transform garden harvests into something indulgent. For children, it offered a crunchy treat that made vegetables exciting, while adults appreciated its practicality. The dish reflected how Southern cooks elevated humble crops into meals that carried dignity and satisfaction. It was often served with simple sauces or alongside beans and bread, filling out a plate with ease. Today, fried eggplant has mostly disappeared from everyday kitchens, replaced by quicker or processed sides. Its fading popularity speaks to the loss of seasonal cooking tied directly to gardens. Batter-fried eggplant rounds remain a reminder of resilience and creativity born out of hard times. Cured gizzard confit transformed a humble poultry part into a delicacy through slow, deliberate cooking that celebrated thrift and flavor. Grandmothers cleaned the gizzards carefully, seasoning them with salt, pepper, and garden herbs before submerging them in rendered fat from the same bird. Over hours of gentle heat, the tough muscle relaxed into silky tenderness while absorbing every note of seasoning. Once cooled, the gizzards were stored in their own fat, ready to be crisped in a hot skillet or served cold with pickled vegetables. This method ensured nothing from the chicken went to waste and provided a ready source of protein through busy weeks. Guests were often surprised by the rich taste that rivaled more expensive cuts of meat, proving that economy and elegance could share the same plate. Cured gizzard confit stands as a testament to the Southern grandmother's ability to elevate the simplest ingredients into something extraordinary with patience, care, and a deep respect for the whole bird that nourished the family table. Wild turkey roasted with chestnut dressing was Christmas dinner that required hunting success and forest knowledge. These weren't farm turkeys, but wild birds shot in December woods, their meat darker and more flavorful than domestic fowl. The turkey was stuffed with dressing made from dried cornbread, wild chestnuts gathered in fall, sage, and onions. Roasted slowly, the bird developed crispy skin while staying moist inside, the chestnut dressing absorbing juices and becoming rich and savory. In mountain communities, wild turkey represented Christmas success. The hunter who brought one home provided real celebration. The meat was lean and slightly gamey, requiring careful cooking to stay tender. Chestnuts added sweetness and texture impossible with modern ingredients. This was Christmas earned through December mornings in cold woods, through knowing turkey habits and shooting straight. The finished bird fed extended family, its presence on the table marking genuine achievement. Ramps and eggs were spring's homecoming song in the hills. Ramps, those wild mountain onions with a kick sharp enough to make your eyes water, came up when winter loosened its grip. Folks foraged them along shady slopes, carrying bunches home like treasure. Fried in bacon grease, they turned golden and fragrant, and when you cracked eggs over them, the skillet became a celebration of survival. After months of salted meats and dried beans, this meal tasted alive again. The air filled with that pungent scent only mountain people could love. It was quick to make, rich in flavor, and a sure sign that better weather had arrived. Ramps and eggs reminded everyone that the land still provided if you knew where to look. That first bite after the thaw was like breathing again, spicy, hearty, and filled with gratitude for another season of life in the Appalachian Hills. Venison stew with root vegetables was the essence of frontier survival, a slow-simmered meal that turned wild game into pure comfort. Hunters dressed the deer with practiced skill, saving every cut of meat for the long winter nights ahead. Thick pieces of venison browned in a cast-iron pot before joining chunks of potatoes, turnips, and carrots gathered from sparse gardens or traded from nearby homesteads. A splash of creek water and a handful of dried herbs created a broth that grew richer with every hour beside the fire. The stew cooked until the meat fell apart and the vegetables softened into a silky base that warmed chilled bones after a day in the cold. Families gathered with tin cups and rough bread, savoring each bite while the wind howled beyond the cabin walls. This simple dish brought hunters and children alike around the same pot, proving that careful effort and patience could turn a lean harvest into a feast. Today, few know the deep flavor of true venison cooked with such quiet attention. Cracklin cornbread was once the pride of farmhouse kitchens, combining the richness of pork with the staple of cornmeal. Cracklings, or crispy bits of pork skin and fat, were folded into cornbread batter before baking. The result was a savory, hearty bread with bursts of crunch and flavor in every bite. For families, it was a way to stretch pork trimmings and ensure nothing went to waste. Served hot from cast-iron pans, it paired perfectly with beans, greens, or stews, rounding out meals with rustic comfort. Children grew up associating its smell with warmth and family dinners. Cracklin cornbread carried cultural weight, embodying thrift and creativity in rural kitchens. Today, plain cornbread dominates, leaving the Cracklin version nearly forgotten except in certain regions. Its decline reflects broader changes in diets and preferences, as pork fat gave way to lighter cooking. Still, it remains a powerful reminder of how Southern cooks celebrated resourcefulness. Cracklin cornbread was never just bread, it was heritage in every crumb. Leather breeches with fatback brought summer's green beans to Christmas through ancient preservation. These weren't canned beans, but fresh beans strung on thread in late summer and hung from rafters. By Christmas, they hung brown, rattling when touched. The beans were soaked overnight, then cooked slowly with fatback until tender. The result tasted like concentrated summer with smoky richness. In Appalachian homes, leather breeches represented connection between seasons, August abundance preserved for December. Grandmothers taught granddaughters proper stringing, threading beans carefully for drying. The beans hung all fall, visible reminders of summer work feeding Christmas tables. Cooked long, they became tender with chewy texture unlike fresh beans. The pot liquor was rich, sopped with cornbread. This represented mountain resourcefulness, preserving without equipment, feeding families through winter using thread and time. Poke salad greens were one of those dishes that demanded both courage and care. Pokeweed grew wild and fast, but it could turn dangerous if you did not boil it just right. Still, folks learned how to tame it. After boiling and rinsing it several times, they would fry it in bacon grease until tender and smoky. It became a side dish with real backbone, a plate full of green proof that mountain people could make a meal out of almost anything. Every bite carried a hint of the wild earth it came from. Eating poke salad was an act of both survival and defiance, a way to say, "We will eat well, even when the cupboard's empty." Served with cornbread or salt pork, it fed families through hard months when gardens were thin. In every community that made it, poke salad greens stood for resilience, bravery, and the genius of hungry folks who refused to go without. Iron pot split. Pea soup with salted ham hock was the slow-simmered comfort that sustained hunters through the bitterest winter nights. Dried peas soaked in cool water overnight were poured into a heavy pot along with chunks of smoked ham hock and a scattering of onions and carrots. The mixture bubbled gently beside the hearth for hours, the peas breaking down into a creamy base while the pork released deep smoky flavor. The scent filled cabins and canvas tents alike, promising warmth and nourishment when snow drifted high against the walls. Served with coarse bread or a slice of bannock, each bowl offered steady energy for long days of trapping or chopping wood. Children slurped it eagerly, the rich broth clinging to their spoons and warming their hands. This soup required little more than time and patience, yet delivered both comfort and vital strength. Today, quick-dried mixes cannot match the depth of flavor earned by a night of slow cooking over glowing coals and the quiet satisfaction of a meal born from simple ingredients. Boiled custard was once a cherished stovetop dessert drink, especially popular at Christmas before eggnog dominated. Made by gently cooking milk, eggs, sugar, and vanilla until thickened, it was served chilled in cups or poured over cakes. Families saw it as a holiday luxury, simple yet elegant. Children loved its creamy sweetness, often sneaking extra sips when no one was watching. Adults valued it as a celebratory tradition that required care and patience to prepare. Boiled custard represented comfort and indulgence in an era when ingredients were scarce, showing how much joy could come from basics. At gatherings, it was poured into punch bowls or shared from pitchers, bringing people together. Its place at Christmas tables gave it special meaning, tied to memory and festivity. Today, it is nearly forgotten, with eggnog taking over as the seasonal favorite. Its decline speaks to changing tastes and the fading of handmade holiday traditions. Boiled custard remains a forgotten gem, one sip carrying the warmth of Southern celebrations. Fried apple pies with sorghum were Christmas dessert that children waited for all year. Dried apples from summer harvest were rehydrated and cooked down with sorghum syrup, cinnamon, and nutmeg until thick and jammy. The filling was enclosed in circles of biscuit dough, crimped shut, and fried in hot lard until golden and crackling. The result was handheld Christmas joy. Crispy outside, molten apple inside, sweet and spiced. In rural communities, fried apple pies meant celebration accessible to poorest families, since dried apples cost nothing but summer work. Children received these as special treats, burning their mouths on hot filling while snow fell outside. The pies were portable, lasting days without refrigeration, making them perfect for holiday visiting. Each bite delivered concentrated apple sweetness balanced by pastry crunch, proving that simplest ingredients could create genuine luxury when prepared with care and love passed through generations. Which forgotten hillbilly side dish would you bring back to your table? Drop your memories in the comments, hit like if this took you back home, and subscribe for more forgotten flavors from country kitchens.